Hey there everybody, it's Mike DiLisio with another solo mode review. Today I'm going to be taking a look at Village Green, a game of pretty gardens and petty grudges from designer Pierre Sylvester and publisher Osprey Games. Village Green is a game where you are trying to create the most beautiful garden through playing award cards and green cards. Very, very simple game just based off of a relatively small deck of cards. Let's head over to the table. I'll show you how the solo game plays, and then we'll come back here and I'll give you my final thoughts. Okay, well, this isn't a fully set up version of the Village Green solo game, and the reason why is that it's so simple. I'm going to show you as it happens. So I just happen to choose Middle Didsbrook as my village, and here's my village card here. You've got two decks of cards. You've got the award cards and you've got the green cards, and simply what you do to set the game up is you take three of these award cards and you place them to the right of your village card, and this is going to be basically your starting three awards that are going to be scoring possibilities for these three columns. The other thing you're going to do is you're going to take the next three and you're going to put them out in a bit of a market. And then you're going to take these green cards, you'll put three of those out. And you'll take three green cards in hand and you are ready to start the game. All right, so for components, there's no difference in the components between the solo game and the standard game. It's simply these two decks of cards, and you don't have anything you have to account for in the solo game. For rules changes, there are a couple of differences with the rules changes, and I'll explain them as I explain the actions that you can do. On your turn, you're going to really do one of two things. You're either going to take and place a award card, or you're going to take and draw and place a green card. Okay, what these award cards are different scoring possibilities, different ways that you're going to score points for green cards that you're going to be placing within your garden. You're trying to get the most points that you possibly can by the end of the game. In the solo game, the main difference is that if you're going to take a draw and place a green card, you have to do it. In the multiplayer game, you could choose to draw a green card, and then if you couldn't or didn't want to place one out in your tableau, you can place it at the bottom of the deck. You cannot do that in the solo game. In the solo game, if you can't place a green card, you can't take that action, okay? You also, in the multiplayer game, you could choose to cover up award cards with other award cards. You can't do that in the solo game. The one exception to that is if you have one of these structure cards, which is denoted by this little kind of gazebo here at the bottom. If you play a structure card, you have to play an award card. That's one of the regular rules of the game. And if you choose to play this card, you then could cover up one of the award cards that you had out there. All right? Otherwise, the rules of placement are pretty simple. You've got different colors and you've got different types of flower symbols here. And when you place a green card out, the first one can be placed anywhere. If you're going to play a card next to another card orthogonally, you have to either match the color or you have to match the symbol. So I could play this card next to this one because they're both purple. I could not place this card here because it doesn't match the color and it doesn't match the symbol. However, you don't have to place green cards next to each other if you don't want to. I could place this here, I can place it over here, depending on what I was trying to score. So let's say that I wanted to look at these different awards. This one is telling me that each card is worth 1 point in this column. Each empty space is worth -3, so I'd want to make sure this has a full column. This is looking for a very particular type of flower, okay? This yellow flower here, all right, which looks to be that flower there. So let's say I drew this card, replaced it, and then placed it right here, okay? At the end of the game, this is going to be giving me 3 points, this card, all right? So that's simply what you're doing. It's a very simple game. You're drawing green cards, placing them out. You're drawing these award cards, placing them both columns and rows. So if I wanted to take one of these award cards, I could, or I could just simply top deck it and place it here. You're eventually going to be having a grid of I didn't quite give myself enough room. I'm a little bit off camera, but you get the idea. You're going to be having this area filled as much as you can. In the solo game, you go until you either choose to stop or cannot take any more actions. The one other thing I forgot to mention is that in the solo game as well as in the standard game, you could flip over your village card. If you don't, it's worth 1 point at the end of the game. But if you flip over your village card, it allows you to do one of a couple of different things. You can either take the top 3 face-up green cards, discard them to the bottom of the deck, and reveal 3 more. Or you can take the draw and play a green card action and place it on top of another one, as long as it still fulfills the other placement rules that have been established of matching a color or matching a symbol. That's the basics. So why don't we head back over and I'll give you my final thoughts. Okay, I think that gives you a pretty good idea on how the solo game plays for Village Green. It's not a complicated game, and it's basically just a puzzle with trying to get that grid of cards the way you want it to be to get the most points. So let's talk about some solo benchmarks that I like to consider when I'm reviewing a solo game. First of all, win conditions. Is there a clear win-loss condition, or is it a beat your high score variant? Well, this is strictly speaking, a score variant. It's a game where you're really just trying to create the best opportunity to get the most points through the combination of the rows and columns. If you can get a particular card to score on both the row and the column, of course, that's ideal. You're trying to be the most efficient you can. And to some extent, it's not always the most satisfying form of solo games, but this is a puzzle game. And so really, it doesn't bother me in this case. It wouldn't really even make sense to have a virtual opponent. I mean, I suppose you could, but this is just a puzzle, efficiency puzzle. And so as such, I don't really particularly mind that it's a high score variant. Is it going to potentially detract from the replayability of it? Sure, but it's a small card game. It's not something that you're going to be spending hours playing, and so you probably won't have too much of an issue coming back every so often and playing the game. So not a huge negative for me in this particular case. Setup and teardown. Well, you saw it. I mean, it's a breeze. This is one of those games you can get off the shelf and you're playing it within less than a minute. I mean, it is really, really simple. You shuffle the 2 decks, you put your village card out there, and you go. So a big, big, big positive here. It's a small box that has virtually 0 setup and teardown time, which means that it's a game that if you've got 15 minutes and you want to get a quick game in, a quick little puzzle, this could be one of those go-to games. It actually reminds me quite a bit of another game called Mr. Cabbagehead Garden that has a similar feel. And that's another game that's quick to get off the shelf. I can see this kind of fulfilling that same kind of scratching that same itch, so to speak. The rules are fine. I mean, there's almost nothing to it. This is one of those games where you can teach it to somebody in minutes, maybe in a minute. There's really very little to it. Very simple to learn, very simple to teach if you're playing with others. And as a solo game, you're not going to struggle over the rules to this. You probably know how to play just from that very brief overview that I gave you a few moments ago. Okay, so the overall solo experience, what do I think? Well, I've mentioned a couple of things just in the benchmarks. First of all, it's a game that has the benefit of being really short. It's just a quick little puzzle. It's not going to make your brain explode, but it is going to give you a nice sense of solving a puzzle, of trying to be as efficient as possible. That being said, there's also a large dose of luck involved. I mean, there are many times when you really are at the mercy of the cards that are available to you. And oftentimes, your decisions may be a little bit obvious. You oftentimes will have a very clear, this is the best move for me to make. Or you might also have a situation where you very clearly know that none of your options are terribly wonderful and you're making the best of your bad options that are available. So keep that in mind. Luck plays a heavy factor, but it's such a short game that even if you have a bad run of cards, you could just shuffle it up and play again and try to get a better distribution in your next game. So that's not a huge issue. The art is absolutely gorgeous. I adore the art and I adore the theme. And in a game like this, which is essentially an abstract game, it's nice to have something that looks so pretty. This is going to be oftentimes the thing that will make me choose one of these short puzzle games over another is what am I in the mood for? If I'm in the mood for something kind of light and breezy and pastoral, this would be a good option for that because it fulfills that purpose. It serves that role. Now, there are a lot of games, honestly, that kind of sit in this mix. I mentioned Mr. Cabbagehead's Garden. Another game I can think of that I would kind of consider similar to this would be something like Sunset Over Water. So there are a large number of small box, quick to set up and play card games with a puzzle element. And which one might appeal to you may come down to theme, may come down to art. And it may just come down to personal preference. I feel like this is one that is maybe not in the upper echelon, but certainly not at the bottom either. This is a game that I enjoy. But it is fighting with some other games that I already have that fulfill a similar purpose. So overall, beautiful art, beautiful components. Well, the components are cards, but it's beautiful art on the cards. Very simple to set up and play and tear down, and you can play multiple games in one session, and all of those are positives. High amount of luck, maybe limited replayability, and it's in a getting even more daily crowded market of these types of short puzzle games. So all that being said, I do recommend this game as a solo game because it's a small box game. It's not going to have a huge price tag. I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10 and a seal of approval. It is, like I said, it's fighting with other games that have some similar feels to it. But if this theme appeals to you, if this art appeals to you, you absolutely should take a look at Village Green. Thank you so much for your time as always, and have a great day.